As background, House Bill 525 is promoted as an abortion provider defunding bill. It is supposed to block counties, cities, public health districts, and any state agency in the state of Idaho or state board or commission from expending or transferring public monies to any individual or organization that is a provider of abortion. The problem is that in 4 sections of code that it is adding to Idaho code, it says that abortions are eligible for public funding if, for example, it is to save the life of the woman or in cases of rape or incest. Those abortions are eligible for public funding. Let's listen in to a legislator, the sponsor of the Abortion Human Rights Act, oppose House Bill 525. Listen to her reasons. This is Representative Heather Scott, and also listen to Representative Brian Zollinger address a direct question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, you just talked about how this is already in statute, this 18608. And my question is, do you believe that, so you talked about life and liberty. Our Article 1, Section 1 of our Constitution says all men. This 18608 that's already in code is constitutional. And if not, why would you put more unconstitutional language in 525? Because does it protect all life, which we're bound to the Constitution for all life?
Representative Scott, what I believe is that we've delegated the authority to determine constitutionality to the Supreme Court of the United States. My personal belief and my personal interpretation of the Constitution, no, I don't believe it is, because I believe murder is murder and that abortion at any stage is murder. If I was on the Supreme Court, would I have decided Roe versus Wade in cases like that differently? Absolutely. But it's pretty well accepted that the Supreme Court is a final say of what's constitutional, and unfortunately that's the decision they came to until we have a different makeup of that court. I don't see any way to get around that right now unless we went nullification, and we all know it just doesn't happen in reality.
I'm Representative Christy Zito. I represent District 23, CA. Mr. Chairman, committee members, the issue of abortion is never an easy one to face. Is it unconstitutional in my belief? Absolutely, totally, absolutely is it unconstitutional to take the life willingly of any citizen of this country in any stage. If tomorrow or today or in this very second I could wave a magic wand and make it so that every abortion was never performed again, I would do that. But because of things that Representative Zollinger has already discussed, because of Supreme Court cases and because we've abdicated to those issues already before we find ourselves in this position today. This is a step for us to take to move closer to doing away with the murder of children. I, for one, will not stand here when I have the opportunity to save even one life and sacrifice the blood of that child on the altar of perfection. Every life is precious. Every life has meaning. Every child that is conceived is created in the glorious image of God and our Creator.
Scripture says in Isaiah 10:1, "Woe to them that make unjust laws." The Idaho Constitution in Article 1, Section 1 says that for all men there is an inalienable right to life. But they believe that H525 is an unconstitutional law, and it's in that but that life is alienated. They need to stand firm for the Constitution and for God's law, thou shalt not murder.
Committee, we have House Bill 525 before us. Representative Andrus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we send House Bill 525 to the floor with a due pass recommendation.
We have a motion. Any discussion on the motion? Representative Scott.
Make a substitute motion that we hold this bill in committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I truly believe this is good intention. I think we need to look at the entire bill and what we're actually doing here. And, you know, the comment was made, nullification doesn't work. Nullification has worked for slavery. It's worked with marijuana for many states, and I'm concerned that with the murdering of babies, it's just not important enough. We say we value every life, but this bill is actually codifying using public monies in our public health districts, our cities, our counties. That is not currently in code. We are adding this to code, which I think is a huge mistake. We take an oath to uphold the Constitution, and that says that we're going to protect all life. Our code even tells us that a fetus is a baby, and that's all life. But then in this bill we pass, we put language in that says, well, we're going to codify it's okay under these circumstances. Abortion's eligible for public funding for state. Abortion's eligible for public funding, public health districts. Abortion's eligible for public funding, city. And then abortion's eligible for public funding, county. By voting in favor of this bill, we are putting that into our code, and we're basically saying those lives, because of the Supreme Court or because of it's already in code that we're allowed to do this, they don't matter. And I tell you, those babies do matter. We are killing 38 babies a week in Idaho, and over 15 or 1,800 a year. And this bill is not going to end one of those murders. I just think that we'll be back here another year, and then next year, and next year, and we're going to be in the same boat because we will not address the core of this issue. I'm standing on the fact that I uphold the Constitution. I've not sworn my oath. I haven't sworn my oath to the court's opinion. And I truly believe that the nice term abortion is murdering babies. And I cannot vote for a bill that will codify using tax dollars, income tax dollars, sales tax dollars, any property values. I cannot do that to kill innocent life just because their fathers are criminals. We are literally sending a death penalty to these rape and incest babies by passing this legislation. We are putting this into, this is new language. We are voting on that language. We're not saying, oh, well, it's already, I guess what you are by voting for this is you're saying, well, it's already in the code and I'm not going to fight it. I agree with it. It's in the code. And I guess I would challenge each of you before you made this vote to say, I disagree with the rape and incest murder, so I will vote no against this so we don't start funding them by our health districts.
And on the same day that Representative Scott opposed House Bill 525 in the State Affairs Committee, on the House floor was the following action by Representative Scott and Representative Priscilla Giddings regarding House Bill 361, the Abortion Human Rights Act, that would criminalize all abortions in the state of Idaho.
Okay, good. The House will be in order. House Bills 463 and 469 will be filed for the second reading. Good lady from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to House Rule 17, I'd like to call that House Bill 361 come to the floor.
Okay, so pursuant to Rule 17, we'll probably be going at ease to walk all this through.
Let me read the
No, you don't need to read the rule to us. You're calling House, what bill?
It's the Abortion Human Rights Act.
What number? Number.
Its number? 361.
6.
The Rule 17. Okay. This is a little unusual, so we'll go at ease while everybody on both sides of the aisle gets the procedure down. The House will be at ease. The House will be in order prior to going at ease. The House was in the fifth order of business, and we have a call from the good lady from District 1 to call House Bill 361 from the Ways and Means Committee. Gentleman from 12.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Speaker, I would move that the House Ways and Means Committee be excused from reporting House Bill 361.
Gentleman from 22.
Mr. Speaker, I second that motion.
We have a debatable motion. Gentleman from 12.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 361 was presented to the House Ways and Means Committee as a personal bill. As most of you know, that one of the privileges of being a member is to be able to bring in an RS form through the House Ways and Means Committee to allow it to become to obtain a bill number. But that bill has not gone through the committee process, and for that reason, we'd ask that it remain in the Ways and Means Committee.
Is there further debate? Lady from 1.
So I'd like to debate against the motion
To excuse the committee.
to excuse the committee. I understand personal bills, but there's no rules that personal bills are personal bills. It has a bill number. It's been sitting in committee. Out of courtesy to my germane committee, who was not comfortable at the time with the legislation, he'd told me my only option to get a bill number was to go through the Ways and Means Committee. So I followed my germane committee's chairman's advice and got the bill number. So it's been held in that committee, but we are starting to hear similar bills. This bill 361 is the Abortion Human Rights Act. And so we're starting to hear similar bills on other approaches to this issue. And so I just think out of fairness, at minimum, they could redirect that bill. If they pull it up in committee, they could redirect it to the State Affairs Committee, or they could redirect it there, or we could bring it up here and have the debate here without public hearing. I think they were concerned the public hearing might draw in too many people, so this would be an option to get to vote on this bill and actually talk about the topic of Abortion Human Rights Act.
Is there further debate? Lady from 7.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the good gentleman from 12 yield to a question?
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman yield.
Gentleman yield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman. So you were just sharing that that there are personal bills in your committee. Can you share how many bills you have in your committee that you have not allowed a public hearing on?
I don't believe that is a germane to the motion.
Mr.
So I'm going to
Speaker.
call the question out of order.
Mr. Speaker, he's trying to dissolve the committee so that we don't address these bills. My point is that if you have bills in your committee that need to be addressed, then it wouldn't make sense for you to dissolve the committee. The
motion doesn't dissolve the committee. The motion excuses the committee from specifically sending House Bill 361 to the floor for debate right now. That's the motion.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, follow up.
Will the gentleman yield to another question?
Gentleman yield.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good gentleman. Can you share with me where in our procedures and our House rules it says that personal bills are not allowed public hearings?
Gentleman from 12.
Mr. Speaker, I can't point to a specific point in the rules. I can just tell you that that's how we've operated since I've been here.
Is there further debate?
Follow up.
Will the gentleman yield to another question?
Yes, one more.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, good gentleman. So just, I guess I'm concerned for Idahoans who want to testify about legislation.
Come to the question.
There's no, so what authority, can you show me what authority that you have for us to not give a bill that a legislator has introduced and has a bill number? What authority do we have to not allow the public to testify through a public hearing?
Gentleman from 12.
Mr. Speaker and good lady, every committee chairman has the ability to set an agenda. The good lady from 1 has had the opportunity to have the bill introduced in a germane committee. That committee chairman has decided not to do so. The privilege of obtaining a bill number is something that is afforded members, but it does not bypass the committee process. Ways and Means is not a committee that does public hearings. We do not hear bills. We introduce bills and give them bill numbers.
Is there further debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To debate against
You have the floor.
the motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good gentlemen. And you know, I've only served in the legislature for 4 years. And through that time, it seems like there's been an ebb and flow of which bills get to be provided public hearings and which bills do not get to be provided public hearings. And it does not seem transparent for Idahoans. We have Idahoans in the capital of the Rotunda begging and pleading that their bill numbers be given public hearings. And I was never taught in grade school or government class that people had to beg for legislation. It is our job as legislators to be able to present bills and then to have a public hearing, and that would be very transparent. And if committee members are allowed to make a vote up or down, that is transparent so that Idahoans know where we stand on issues. And that also allows a free market of free ideas to be brought forward. That's how we solve complex issues. And that's how we deal with issues that are very complicated, such as abortion, but even, every issue, whether it's taxes or just life and death education issues. Letting free ideas come forward and vote on them is the way I've been taught that the process should work. And so I just pause and I'm concerned because it sometimes when Idahoans' ideas are not allowed to go through the legislative process, it sends a message that maybe that we're not listening to our constituents. And that's not fair for us because I am listening to my constituents. But when we have committee chairmen who are specifically saying that their committee doesn't allow bills because they have the authority to decide whether or not bills go forward. In our Constitution, only the gentleman on the second floor has veto authority. Each individual chairman should not be given that veto authority. And this is especially a sensitive issue for me because I have multiple bills that people in my district who have asked for hearings, who have brought forward ideas, and those ideas are being stonewalled. And that's not fair to Idahoans. It's not transparent. And it is my hope that we can get through this idea of just because this is the way we've always done it, that we're just going to continue to ignore our constituents. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
In support of the motion, we have a committee process here, and I think the committee process is very important that we pay attention and go. The reason we have this, if we didn't have the committee process and we allowed every bill, we would have to be a full-time legislature. We'd have to be here every day, every year, because the bills would be lined up. There would be thousands of them. Everybody would bring bill after bill after bill over each individual issue. To keep us a part-time legislature, which was, I believe, what the people of Idaho want us to be, could you imagine if we were full-time? I don't think anyone in Idaho would vote that way. The importance of keeping it the way we do, there has to be a backstop somewhere for everything. If you don't have the backstop, you're going to continue on forever and ever, and it's just, there has to be a stop. I lost my train of thought there, I apologize. The committee process is designed to be able to have those built into it. If there's a problem with that, it's going to be dealt with when the voters have that opportunity to vote for each and every one of us. Every 2 years, they're able to vote for us. If they have a problem with it being held up and they think the process is being thwarted by the chairman, then they have that obligation right at the ballot box to vote us out. Here in a few months, they're going to have that opportunity, and we will see if that's a problem.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 27.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Section 442 of Masons, and I'll paraphrase here, basically says the following. that a bill should not become a law without going through a committee hearing prior to going to the floor to be debated upon. And that's long-standing procedure, that's long been established in parliamentary procedure in most legislative bodies, and it certainly has been in Idaho. Ways and Means is not a policy committee. Ways and Means prints bills. And so Ways and Means can't hear a bill anyway to start with. If you want to have your bill heard, then you go and get it introduced into a policy committee. And if the chairman has a good reason not to do that, there may well be a good reason not to do that.
Good lady from District 18.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate the motion. I very much hear what the good ladies from 7 and 1 are saying. I think we genuinely do have a real problem with transparency and with accountability due to the current system. And I don't think that it necessarily serves the people of Idaho well that there is such widespread veto power being spread around the building. And I don't think the public knows what they don't know. They don't know what they're not seeing. They have no idea the scope and nature of what is being held in drawers at any given time. That said, I think there is some middle ground. I also hear what the good gentleman from 20 is saying, that we don't want to be here year-round, but I think that there is middle ground. I don't think our choices are between hearing absolutely everything that comes into any committee and being here year-round versus having absolute veto power where any bill can be held out of public view for perpetuity without anybody being the wiser. I think there are standards that we could apply, and I think there are all kinds of reasonable standards that would keep things manageable, but that would allow for more transparency. And I think we need to be looking hard at those structural changes.
Does anyone wish to debate the motion for the first time? Gentleman from 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to give maybe a little perspective, I have a bill that I introduced as a personal bill that went to Ways and Means, knowing full well that it wasn't going to get a hearing at that time, because that's what happens. It was my ability to get that as a message out there. I've received a lot of positive and negative comments on that, and that was one of the rationales for doing that. It's an appropriate place to express ideas and get those ideas out there, and I think that was a good thing. And so I think the good chairman there treating me the same as he is everybody else, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the fact that he is consistent in the way that he administers his committee, and I support him and his decisions to be excused on this motion.
Does anyone wish to debate the motion for the first time? Lady from District 1 for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to testify against the motion to excuse the committee. And my reasoning is I've had 2 central committees that represent 2 different counties in my area that have passed resolutions about this bill, House Bill 361, the Abortion Human Rights Act. I do not believe it is appropriate for one person as a committee chairman who represents a completely different group of people than the people that I represent to suppress that idea. And I told my citizens I would do whatever possible to try to get on the record public testimony on this bill. And I really just want to have the conversation. I just really want to have the debate, the conversation, because as you all know, if you never get to present different ideas, we keep going down one direction, and your idea might not be on that direction. And if you don't get that opportunity to share your idea, people can never see the other side. And I don't think any of us like our ideas or our citizens' ideas being controlled in this manner. And so I think what I'd like to do is make a motion that House Bill 361 be redirected to the germane committee. So I guess we as a body could make the decision, once it gets back up to the floor, to send it back to the germane committee. We can make decisions as a body, because that's why we all meet once a day, to go through what we've gone through in the committees. So if the bill does get returned, does get brought to the floor, I am very amenable to saying, let's get it redirected back down to the germane committee and try to get a hearing in that committee. But being stuck in a committee that the chairman will refuse to have a hearing on, and I thought maybe I could get a hearing over there. We just want a public hearing. We just want both sides of the issue to be heard. And this bill is very important to me, and it's really important to my citizens. And then there's a ton of citizens from Boise and Twin Falls, and it's causing a divide in conservatives, this whole issue, and that's why I think all parts of this conversation need to be had, and that's why I'd like this bill to be heard. So just to reiterate, if you vote against this excusing the committee, and we bring it up to the floor, I am very happy to even make the motion to just redirect it to its germane committee. And then I can start with my committee chairman again. But as of now, I can't do anything as it's just sitting in this quasi-committee that nobody really knows what goes on there.
Gentleman from 12, please stand and close the debate on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have this issue come up from time to time. It's come up at least 2 or 3 times since I've been the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. The important thing to remember is that we do operate this body through the committee structure. And there's expertise and knowledge in these committees. It creates for better legislation. And though it may not be perfect, I think that it works well for the citizens of Idaho. I think it's also important to remember that based on the fact that the good lady from 1 doesn't currently have the support of the germane committee, she wouldn't.
Okay, I object.
He
doesn't know what's going on in our committee. He doesn't come to our committee. He doesn't attend our committee. He doesn't know where the ideas of our committee are.
Yeah, you don't have the prerogative to explain. You have the prerogative to object. The gentleman will continue with his closing.
Rephrase, Mr. Speaker. I apologize to the good lady from 1. Because this bill has not been heard in committee and was not introduced in committee, my deduction is that it doesn't have the support of at least the committee chairman. And my point was that her bill, House Bill 361, wouldn't have a bill number at this point had it not been introduced through the Ways and Means Committee. And again, that's a privilege afforded to members of this body so that we can get these ideas out in bill format so people can share them, and talk about them, build constituency around them, and then at some point, whether it's during the course of a legislative session or in future years, bring that idea back when it's properly prepared for a germane committee to hear. So again, I would just ask for your support on this motion in order to maintain the committee structure that we operate under and have for many years.
Thank you. Debate is closed. The question before us is, shall the Ways and Means Committee be excused from bringing to the floor House Bill 361? A yes vote excuses the committee. A no vote does the opposite. The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will record their votes on the motion. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his vote? The clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. The vote count shows 57 in favor with 7 against and 6 absent. The motion has failed. The House is in the 5th order. Madam Clerk,
Hey, this is Scott Herndon, the author of the Abortion Human Rights Act. This is a really important video related to the Abortion Human Rights Act. The main bill sponsor, Heather Scott, was in committee and opposes a pro-life bill, and she gives a great reason why she opposes it. And this is where we actually need to get a lot of legislators to oppose bad pro-life bills and to support the abolition of abortion. Then Heather Scott goes to the floor on the same day. This just happened, February 28, 2020, Friday. She goes to the floor and she fights for the Abortion Human Rights Act in the only way that's available to her at the moment. But let me tell you how we can help her. We can help her by showing a whole bunch of people are willing to give their money to this cause. And it's not the total number of dollars that we need, is the number of people that are willing to step up, give a little bit of money, because that is like a vote at this point, because we don't have an election directly in front of us. And we want to encourage this legislature that people want this bill. If you would please go to our website, abolishabortionid.com. Go to abolish-abortion-PAC. It's a link on our website for the Abolish Abortion PAC. Make a $10 contribution. That's all we're asking to do. In the next 2 weeks, if we can accumulate 500 or 1,000 contributions of $10, that's all we need. Then we can go to these legislators and we can say, look, this fight that Heather Scott just did for us, this fight that she just did for abolition, because this is a contribution to abolition, is going to speak volumes to them. Money talks to legislators, and all it's saying is there's a whole bunch of people in Idaho and elsewhere that really care about this bill, and they're willing to give their money. They've already signed petitions. We've got thousands of petitions signed. They're willing to give a little bit of money for this bill so that we can get the word out and we can encourage these legislators. So watch to the end and then give your money. Thank you.